In today's modern society, robotic technology is advancing at a rapid pace. We started off with things like the Roomba, but now have more advanced humanoid robots and even robot dogs. Who knows what we'll have in another 10 years? In 1987, we were given a glimpse of this future with the film Robocop, where a murdered cop is brought back to life as a cyborg to continue the fight against crime. We'll take a look back at this sci-fi classic on the next Back to the Future.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Robocop was a big success when it came out, mainly because it had lots of action and gratuitous violence and a great cast. First up, you have Peter Weller in the role of Robocop. Up until that point, he was best known for the title role in the Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension. And yes, that's actually the long-ass title. Nancy Allen of Carrie and Blowout fame plays his partner who sticks by him even after his transformation to a cold cyborg. The bad guys are all perfectly cast for the movie. You have Dick Jones, played by Ronny Cox from Deliverance and Beverly Hills Cop, as the head executive of OCP, who's dirty as hell. And underneath him at OCP is Bob Morton, played by Miguel Ferrer, who wasn't well known at this point, but he would go on to have a long career. Dick Jones has a gang of misfits that do his dirty work for him, and the leader of this group is Clarence Boddicker, played by Kurtwood Smith, who most people now know as Red on that 70s show. To me, he will always be Red. I couldn't tell you anything else he's been in, so throughout the duration of this video, I'm just going to call him Red. The movie opens up with a newscast where the anchors tell you how bad things are in the world and in Detroit, but they do it all with a smile. 3 police officers were killed in the line of duty, and a picture of Red is shown as the suspect. At the Metro West Precinct, we meet Officer Alex Murphy, who is transferring in from a much nicer district. He's just another beat cop in a future Detroit that is on the brink of total collapse to the point where the city outsources control of the police department to a large corporation called Omni Consumer Products, or OCP. He is introduced to his new partner, Ann Lewis, who's a bit of a badass. At OCP, Dick Jones presents his new law enforcement robot called the Ed 209. At first glance, it's pretty impressive. Being 1987 though, the filmmakers did all the scenes with Ed 209 with stop motion, and it shows. Unfortunately, the Ed 209 malfunctions and murders a volunteer right in front of an entire room of executives, including Dick's boss, affectionately known as the Old Man. The volunteer is turned into Swiss cheese, and somebody actually says, "Call a paramedic." All the king's horses and all the king's men aren't putting that guy back together. Dick tells the Old Man it was just a glitch, no big deal. While Dick is getting chewed out, Bob Morton sees his chance and jumps in to pitch his own plan to the Old Man. Dick tries to shoot him down, but the Old Man is open to hearing anything that will save their asses. So Bob scores points with the Old Man, but now has Dick Jones as an enemy. Back on the street, Lewis compliments Murphy on his fancy gun moves as he twirls his gun like a Wild West gunslinger. This will become important later on in the movie. The break is interrupted by an all-units call, and the suspects are armed and dangerous. In the back of a delivery van, Red is yelling at his team for burning the money when they blew the vault door in the bank they just robbed. Now the money is pretty much worthless. They quickly notice that Murphy and Lewis are behind them, and Murphy calls for backup only to be told the backup won't be available for another 15 minutes. They exchange gunfire, and the bad guys toss one of their wounded out the back to slow them down. Murphy and Lewis track the van to an abandoned factory that's used as a hideout, and Murphy lets Lewis decide if they should go in now or wait for backup. She says go, so they go. Except the first thing they do is split up, which is always a bad idea. Lewis is the first one to encounter one of the gang, and she's quickly knocked out, leaving Murphy to confront the remaining bad guys on his own. He finds 2 of them watching TV. He kills the first one, and the other one gives up when Murphy says,
"Dead or alive, you're coming with me."
This is another thing that will become important down the road. He's got shotguns pointed at him from all directions, and then he comes face to face with Red. Murphy is knocked to the ground, and what happens next was one of the most brutal scenes I'd ever seen in a movie. I remember the audience in the theater being a bit shook by how brutally violent it was. Red shoots Murphy's gun hand clean off, point blank with the shotgun, and that hand just disappears. There's nothing left but a bloody stump. Murphy stumbles around in shock as Red just steps aside and lets his boys have their fun. And the next blast takes his already wounded arm clean off at the shoulder. Lewis hears the gunfire and comes running, but it's a little late to be showing up though. They keep shooting until they're out of ammo, and somehow Murphy is still alive. Not for long though, as Red shoots Murphy right in the forehead, blowing out the back of his head. The gang takes off and Lewis comes running in to check on him. He's foobar, lady. You're way too late. The poor dude, it was his first shift. Bob Morton has Murphy's body commissioned into his Robocop program as the first test subject. As Robocop, Murphy no longer has any memory of his previous life, and from the outside, the only part that is still Murphy is his face. As he's being assembled, Bob is pretty happy with himself with how he's turning out.
You're gonna be a bad motherfucker.
Bob Morton and his troops show up at the Metro West precinct to set up shop for Robocop. This is the first time we get a good look at Robocop in all his glory. His approaching heavy mechanical footsteps gets everyone's attention. He's brought in from a side door and heads to his new digs in the precinct, while the police scurry down the hall to try and get a better look at him. They set up a recharging station for him in a backroom holding area. Bob only has 2 questions. First is how do they track him? And one of the techs shows him a tracking device that shows his location at all times. The other question is how does he eat? Since Robocop has a simple digestive system, they've developed a paste that he consumes that looks and tastes like baby food. Robocop has been programmed with some prime directives. Number 1, serve the public trust. Number 2, protect the innocent. Number 3, uphold the law. And then there's directive number 4 that is only listed as classified. Robocop hits the shooting range where he puts on a show of perfect marksmanship for the other cops. His old partner Lewis is there and watches as Robocop does the same gun twirl that Murphy did, a similarity that doesn't go unnoticed. Robocop heads out on patrol, where his first stop is a convenience store in the process of being robbed. His next stop is a sexual assault in progress where 2 thugs are assaulting a woman in a parking lot. One of the thugs is holding the woman at knife point, and Robocop aims right between her legs and shoots the guy in the crotch. His buddy quickly surrenders while his dickless friend screams in pain. His next call turns out to be a hostage situation involving a city councilman. He's already killed 1 hostage, and he has the police and media at bay when Robocop pulls up. Once the media sees him, they all turn their attention away from the SWAT commander they were interviewing. The SWAT guy tries to negotiate with the man while Robocop makes his way inside. Robocop approaches the situation from the room next door and can see everything through the walls with heat vision. Just like in Predator, only with a clearer picture. He punches through the wall and pulls the man back through, and then punches him, sending him flying out the second-story window where he hits the pavement right in front of all the news cameras. Robocop becomes a media sensation as the local news does a profile on him, showing him doing an appearance at a local school. Then we see newly promoted Bob Morton on the news, promising the end of all crime in Detroit in 40 days due to Robocop being on the streets. That's a lofty goal there, Bob. Back at the office, Bob starts running his mouth in the executive bathroom where a colleague warns him about Dick Jones being mad. But Bob isn't scared. He thinks Dick is past his prime and out the door. What Bob doesn't know is that Dick is on the shitter listening to everything he's saying. Dick comes out of the stall like a cowboy walking through the saloon doors. He confronts Bob and admits that he used to do the same thing. When he was younger, he would badmouth the old man, but he always respected him. He reminds Bob that he's the number 2 man. No reference to what he just did in the toilet. And once the old man is gone, Dick will be in charge and Bob is history. Back in his charging station, Robocop starts twitching. He's starting to remember back to when he was Murphy and eating shotgun shells. He gets up and pushes past the techs, leaving them freaking out about what to do. And on his way out, he comes across Lewis, who takes the opportunity to introduce herself. She tells him that his name is Murphy, but he doesn't remember her, and he just gets in his car and leaves. One of Red's minions rides up to a gas station and robs the place. While he's there, he gets some free gas too, which ends up being a mistake because now he's there long enough for Robocop to drive up. Robocop gets out and draws his gun.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
The thug instantly recognizes that phrase and starts shooting, but the bullets bounce right off while he repeats, "You're dead, we killed you." Now gas is spraying everywhere, and the thug purposely drops a cigarette as he takes off on his motorcycle, leaving the gas station to explode as Robocop shoots the motorcycle, causing him to crash. He goes and picks him up, but he's out cold. Robocop returns to the station and jacks into the servers to look up the thug. He finds his profile information and his known associates, which includes Red. Once he sees Red's mugshot and that his list of crimes include being a suspect in the murder of Officer Murphy, it all comes back to him. He then pulls up his own profile showing his picture and home address. Poor Robocop drives out to his old neighborhood and finds his house is up for sale. He walks into the empty house where he is greeted by a video of a salesman touting its features. As he walks around the house, he starts to recall memories with his wife and young son. It's a lot for him to take in as they're all happy memories. His anger reaches a climax and he punches his fist through the salesman's video screen. Robocop then shows up at a nightclub where the place is jumping. He was looking for Red, and instead he finds one of his lackeys who's dumb enough to try to punch and kick a metal robot. Robocop easily drags him away for questioning. Back at Bob Morton's house, there's another party going on. He has a couple of ladies over and they're hitting the cocaine pretty hard. The doorbell rings and Bob answers the door only to have Red push his way in. He orders the ladies to leave and Bob starts pulling the old "don't you know who I am" bit. And it turns out Red does know who he is and that's why he's there. He shoots Bob in the legs a few times to shut him up. And at that point, Bob changes his tune and starts begging for his life. Red pops a disc into the player on the wall, and Dick shows up on the screen laughing at Bob. He explains how Bob fucked up, and now he has to be put in his place. And while he's talking, Red pulls out a grenade and pulls the pin. He leaves while Bob crawls over to the grenade. Now, I'm not really sure what Bob thought he was going to do when he got to it, but it doesn't matter, though. He blew up. The next day, Red is negotiating with the owner of a cocaine factory. Red's guys drop a bunch of cash on the table trying to sway him. He tells them that he knows all about them having killed a bunch of cops and having connections downtown, but he thinks Red is generating too much heat. Things get a bit heated to the point where everyone pulls their guns out, but the man decides that no one has to die, so he says he's just joking. Before they can seal the deal, there's a loud banging at the door. Something is trying to bust in. Whoever or whatever could that be? As the door takes a pounding, everyone stops what they're doing and grabs their guns. Everyone except Red, who heads for the high ground just as Robocop knocks down the door. They open fire on him, but he just stands there taking it for a second. He walks towards the middle of the room before he starts returning fire. Robocop shoots his way through the bad guys, even pulling a Patrick Mahomes no-look shot at one point. When the dust settles, only Red is left alive. He tries to make a run for it, but Robocop gets a hold of him and starts throwing him through big panes of glass, cutting up his face. And then Red starts squawking about how he's protected because he works for Dick Jones at OCP. Robocop starts choking him out, but stops because of those pesky directives they gave him. Robocop shows up at the Metro West precinct with the handcuffed Red in tow. He tells the desk sergeant to book him for being a cop killer. Red is defiant, though, and demands his phone call as all the cops stare him down. Robocop pulls up to the OCP headquarters and heads up to Dick's office. He enters the office and tells him he is under arrest, and Dick doesn't put up any resistance. He accepts the arrest attempt and holds his hands out. As Robocop approaches him, he starts to malfunction because it turns out Dick had an ace up his sleeve. He had an insurance policy installed as Directive Number 4 that says that Robocop can't arrest any senior officer of OCP, and if he tries, he will automatically shut down. As Robocop is fighting the shutdown, Dick admits that he killed Bob Morton, and he brings in his Ed 209 to kill Robocop. Ed 209 shoots Robocop, knocking him out of the office and into the hallway. And the bullets from Ed 209 don't bounce off of him like regular bullets. They do some damage to his armor. They tussle some more, and Robocop finally does some damage back to Ed 209 by causing it to shoot one of his own hands off. Ed 209 is pissed and starts firing rockets. Robocop heads for the staircase with Ed 209 in pursuit. And in a funny moment, Robocop learns that Ed 209 can't go downstairs. Its feet are too big, and it ends up going head over heels, tumbling down the flight of stairs as Robocop just stands there watching. He was probably laughing on the inside. Ed 209 lands on his back and flops around, struggling to get right side up, as Robocop says peace out and leaves it there. When he gets to the garage, he's greeted by a small army of police who open fire on him. He's taken a beating by the hail of bullets, and at this point you're really feeling bad for the guy. He didn't ask for any of this. He manages to escape by dropping down through the overlapping garage levels until a cop car pulls up and Lewis gets out to save him. She helps him to the car and drives him out of the garage. Red shows up at OCP the next day as they're cleaning up the mess left from the rumble in the jungle. He's dressed in a fancy suit, but his face is all cut up from his encounter with Robocop. And Dick chastises Red for running his mouth to Robocop, telling him that everything he confessed to was recorded and could be used as evidence against them. He wasn't supposed to involve Dick, and now Red is going to have to kill Robocop. Dick gives him the tracking device, and Red asks for some military firepower to do the job. Back at the factory, Lewis is bringing supplies back to Robocop. She brings his gun and a power drill, and the first thing he does is use the drill to remove his helmet. It's the first time either of them have seen his face since he died. And under his helmet, it basically looks like his face is stretched out over his cyborg head. Out on the street that night, Red and his gang are trying out some of their new weaponry by blowing random shit up. They check the tracker and it shows them that Robocop is at the steel mill and off they go. At sunrise, Red and the rest of his troublemakers show up at the mill. They're packing very large weapons capable of killing Robocop. Lewis goes to get the car while the thugs start searching. Now they find Robocop pretty quickly, but only because he wants to be found. He takes one bad guy out almost immediately and heads back into the mill. They may have big guns, but they're lousy shots. The thug from the gas station tries to run Robocop down with his van, but ends up missing and drives straight into a giant tank of toxic waste. He gets washed out the back of his van in a tidal wave of toxic liquid, and almost immediately it turns him into a disfigured monster that grossed the audience out. He's gasping for air and grabs one of his buddies, who freaks out just like the audience. His buddy isn't having any leprosy today and takes off. Around the corner, Lewis is in a car chase with Red. He's looking back over his shoulder and turns around just in time to see his car drive right through his toxic friend. The guy literally comes apart on impact. With his windshield now covered in toxic goo, Red flips his car into a pit filled with water. Lewis pulls up to the edge and gets out of her car just in time to get shot several times by Red. She falls into the pit and Red is about to take the kill shot when Robocop shows up. The only other bad guy still alive is up top and sees Robocop approaching, so he climbs into an overhead crane. Red starts stalling until Robocop is in the right position, and while everyone is playing this game, Lewis crawls through the water to where Red dropped his big-ass gun cannon. The dude in the crane then drops a load of steel girders on Robocop, pinning him to the ground. As they celebrate their victory, Lewis uses the cannon to shoot the guy in the tower, blowing him to bits. So yeah, he's dead. Robocop is pinned, so Red comes over and stabs him with a metal pole. But his ego gets the best of him and he makes the mistake of bending down to gloat in his face. Robocop takes advantage and stabs Red right in the neck. And now we've got a bleeder. I don't think that's going to heal very well. As Red squirts red juice all over the place, Robocop yanks the pole out of his chest and calls out to Lewis. She's still alive, but she's a hot mess. Back at OCP, Dick is holding a meeting with executives that includes the old man. He tells them that he has the building protected by Ed 209. Well, Ed 209 ain't protected shit because Robocop pulls up and he brought Red's gun cannon with him. He takes one shot with it and Ed 209 is toast. Dick is still in the conf room acting like a big shot, at least until Robocop walks in. The old man asks Robocop how he can help, and he explains that Dick Jones needs to be arrested for murder. When asked for evidence, he jacks into the video monitor and starts playing Dick's confession where he said he killed Bob Morton. Dick grabs a gun and yanks the old man up from his chair to use him as a shield. He backs up towards the window and starts demanding a chopper. And on Robocop's vision, we see Directive 4 flashing. He can't arrest Dick. But then the old man tells Dick he's fired. And we see the directive disappear from his vision and Robocop says thank you. The old man elbows himself away from Dick and Robocop starts shooting, turning Dick into high-flying Swiss cheese and right out the window he goes. And in another funny moment, you can tell that the body of Dick falling straight down is actually done with claymation. Everyone is safe. Robocop twirls his gun and holsters it Murphy style. The old man asks him what his name is and he simply responds, Murphy. The end. This movie was a lot of fun and did very well during its run at the theater. Mostly because Robocop looked pretty badass and it had a lot of violence. You can't go wrong with lots of gunplay. Plus some of the lines would become iconic. Lines like,
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
And the line,
I'd buy that for $1.
they would end up making 2 sequels to Robocop, but they were both crap. Even a reboot in 2014 with Joel Kinnaman taking on the title role didn't measure up. Remember the scene where Ed 209 turned a volunteer into Swiss cheese? For that scene, the actor was rigged up with 200 squibs. I'm sure he was probably a bit sore after that. If you've enjoyed this trip down memory lane, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below to help grow this channel. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and hope you will come back for the next Back to the Feature.